Smoak with you on 365 Sports. We have been very fortunate over the last couple of years since Texas OU and then USC and UCLA to get to know people who have been behind the scenes in these decision-making type environments with Patrick Crakes, Bob Thompson, Jim Williams, and others. And Patrick Crakes, consultant media executive, joins us on 365 Sports. Patrick, nothing really has changed when it comes to the Pac-12 since we had you on last, which I think was a couple of months ago. But has anything changed in your mind?
Well, I guess what I think might have changed is that the noose is the wrong word. The corral around media rights overall is beginning to kind of be complete. We've got this distribution system I've talked about that's declining in revenue but produces all the revenue everybody consumes. We've got this new system that struggles to make revenue, and content costs are starting to come in because of that. You see it heavily on the entertainment side. You're seeing stress on the sports media side. As before I thought Thursday Night Football was an example of it, even though it worked out well for the NFL. The established system didn't want it. MLS couldn't get what they wanted, so they went to Apple. It's a bold move, but it comes with some risk. And now the Pac-12 going last of the Power Five and kind of this dance media rights for the next half decade is struggling to find their proper home. And the leaving of USC and UCLA makes it infinitely more complicated.
Pat, do you think that going to a different company, like, the CW has been bandied about as someone who would be potentially interested and might have kicked the tires a little bit on the Pac-12. Is that a good thing for not only Nexstar, who just bought them, but the Pac-12 to maybe start something new if that's what they're pushed to?
Well, look, I'm a firm believer that these large station groups that came about because of retransmission fees that come from pay TV bundles are going to be a great outlet for Tier 2 and Tier 3 sports, in particular, sports that don't currently get rights fees or don't need rights fees to support their elite status. But for the handful of Tier 1 sports in the United States, of which the Pac-12 is one that gets hundreds of millions of dollars in rights fees in a year, I'm baffled without these station groups using their retransmission fees, which they've never done, to pay upfront rights fees. They can match any of that or grow that economics. It would all have to be advertising based. And just for all the listeners, just so they understand, when it comes to rights fees, it's 75-80% pay TV fees that fund those. The advertising is 20% of that. So you really got to have somebody prepared to put up their pay TV fees that they get from a sub fee from ESPN, or the retransmission fee that they get from a broadcast television network, which is what a station group like Nexstar would have with their network with the CW. I don't see that happening, guys. The big media companies have lots of different revenue streams from those two sources, plus advertising that come from lots of media networks and lots of properties. The station groups basically have one that comes from their stations. And it's not a good fit, because if you do end up there, right, with the majority of your inventory, I don't know how you're going to get a rights fee. If you do get a rights fee, I don't know how it's supported. I don't know how it stays where it is. So I don't feel it's a good fit for a majority of their inventory. It may be a decent fit for a small amount of it, but I really don't like it.
So with that being said, it seems like there's, whether or not there's a gray area of what Fox still might be wanting to do, if at all, or ESPN wanting to do, if at all. What other options are there with the Pac-12 and linear? Are those the only options? They just hope they can get something out of them?
I don't know if there's look, there's the most obvious options. Look, there's not a lot of shelf space left, but the truth of the matter is you can find shelf space. And in the case of ESPN, there's shelf space that they can make. And the question is, what's the mix going to be between linear and digital? And with Fox, I could see them saying that they take a small amount of this inventory. Remember that both Fox and ESPN, because of that late Pac-12 window, in their pay TV subs, the sub fees for those two channels, a certain amount of that comes from the Pac-12. The reason why the Pac-12 got the bump they got, and why it was such a good TV deal for them, throw out the channel, right? Throw out Pac-12 networks. Look at their TV deal with Fox and ESPN. At the time, it was a great deal, and it was primarily because pay TV could be monetized with that late window with high quality college football. So, Fox has to kind of figure that out in the negotiation. If they lose it, they can because they've increased Big Ten inventory. They probably figure they can do better, right? But at the same time, there might be some space there. And then ESPN can take a lot of this, I think. And I don't know that ESPN wants to lose any of this. This is a question of, I think, the right mix of distribution and economics. And that happens sometimes in negotiations. And then, of course, you have the streamers who, there's a narrative about what they're trying to do. And then there's the practical reality. If the streamers really wanted this product, they'd overpay a little bit now and lock it up, and they haven't done that, which tells you a lot about where they're really at in their strategy. I don't know that you want to go 100% streaming. As I think I mentioned in the press this week, there's a lot of problems with that when it comes to reach, and the Pac-12 really does still need reach. We're not at the day and age where a streamer can produce the kind of reach you can still get on linear networks. And you just have to be careful with going 100% in on that.
What do you think? Look, the NFL's going, 100% streaming with their Sunday ticket now with YouTube TV. Do you think that is the test case for this a little bit? And maybe the next TV deal, people will see what's going on with how many people, that like me, I'm a DirecTV subscriber. I don't know if I'm going to go over to YouTube TV or not and do that for a 100% streaming model.
It's a little more complicated than that. YouTube TV is a digital package of pay TV channels. It's exactly like what you would get at Comcast or DirecTV. It's just digital. And the economics of that bundle are the same. The only problem is it doesn't have any of the unique characteristics of the established bundle, like natural monopoly and government rate regulation that made them so profitable. They're part of the problem. The cost of those channels are the same in those digital bundles, but the revenue isn't the same, right? Because customers aren't locked up for 2 years. So YouTube TV proper is a package of bundles. The reason why Sunday Ticket makes sense for Google and didn't make sense for anybody else is because think about what Sunday Ticket did with DirecTV for, 25 some odd years. It basically was a marketing tool that sold a package of channels. And YouTube TV is a package of channels, and Sunday Ticket is a marketing tool for that. Now, they're also going to offer it off in channels, and sell it as just a standalone retail product. But right now, it's more expensive than XX a monthly Netflix subscription. So I don't think it's a good model for what we're looking for with the Pac-12. The Sunday Ticket's its own critter. It's a very misunderstood product. Currently today, in the way the NFL allocates their games, there's 3 to 4 national windows every week. It's the 4th best game in your market. It's not the same as it was in '95 when it was clearly many weeks the 2nd best game in your market, maybe the 1st. And you couldn't get it because, at the most you got 3 games in the market. No sold them on Sunday except for 1 on Monday night. So I don't think it's a good model for this. And it's not a test for streaming. I think that when it comes to streaming is incremental to the current system. And for tier 1 properties, there's no flip switch here to where that's going to be 100% good for them. Unless they have some kind of specific needs, like a 25-year-old leg like the MLS that couldn't grow its rights fee anymore and have to go take that kind of big jump to go into the Apple paywall. It comes with, Apple represents 4% of all video minutes consumed across, something less than 4% of all video minutes consumed across all platforms. That's a real reduction in reach. So I don't like it for the Pac-12. I don't think the Sunday Ticket's a good test of streaming. I think streaming is incremental to the current system. And that's why something like ESPN makes so much sense, because ESPN is broadcast, they have 4 linear channels, and they've got a well-distributed streaming product.
Pat, while you've been on with us, Pete Thamel, ESPN, the Big Ten expected to hire former Major League Baseball and CBS Sports executive Tony Pettiti as their next commissioner. Do you know Tony?
I know Tony. I've sat in some meetings with Tony. He's a great executive. He's tough. He's a great executive, and he's very close with some friends of mine. So I'm super happy for Tony, and I think they made a good choice. That's a good choice. I know Kevin. Some of the schools weren't thrilled with Kevin. Kevin was a good choice too, right? He was actually turned out to be the right commissioner for them at the right time. When you look at 10 years from now, it's a transformative, right, expansion. And he was the right guy to do it. You had to be an outsider, I think, to see that. But, Tony is not a college insider, but, he understands television and he understands big time sports. And he's a good thinker. So I think the Big Ten got a good guy, and he is tough. And the Fox guy's got to be going like, well, okay, here it is. This is going to be fun.
I'm not trying to compare him to Brett Yormark when he was hired, but he was another guy that was kind of outside of the business in a way. Is this similar or not?
Well, Brett is a deal maker. And Brett, while he was an outsider, had done a lot of media deals, including deals with Fox. He did them with David Nathanson and myself for some boxing deals. I know Brett, and I think a lot of Brett. And one of the first things Brett did was he went out and got Karen Brodkin to advise him, another former Fox executive who I'm a friend with. And she immediately told Brett that it was a crisis and he needed to treat it as such. And he needed to lock everybody down so you get through the kind of this distribution, 5 years of disruption, so that when the next round of realignment comes, everything's in one place. And they accomplished that. He treated it like a crisis. With Tony, the Big Ten's not – this is an operational execution strategy now, right? Tony is a great operator and has a strong management background. And I think that he's a good choice for this because, there may be more expansion in the Big Ten, there may not, but this is an execution story now for the Big Ten, and he's a great executor.
Well, how much of a loss will he be for Major League Baseball at a time where they need good executors?
Well, Tony left baseball a couple of years ago.
So now he's a CBS now. I had it transposed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's no, I think he's running his own ventures now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends that serve on a board with one of his boards. He's tanned and rested, as they say. Coming out of Arizona, I think hard for this. So I think he's in Arizona these days. But he's just got a lot of operational experience. And he understands the media business, and he brings a fresh perspective, but a familiar perspective. And again, I think this is an execution story for the next 5 years for the Big Ten, and he knows how to do things like that.
Well, I'm not trying to stalk the guy, but I just went to images of Tony Pettiti, and you're right. He's tanned and rested. That's exactly right. He's going to jump into something, but he's ready to do it. You made a comment in a story on CBS Sports about the numbers for Oregon State, Washington State, if in first week in November on FS1 would be 650 to 800,000 viewers, but on a streamer it would be less than half of that, probably 30%, 40%, maybe 50%. Is that not the danger of streaming, but that's kind of the I guess normal percentage there?
Well, I'm basing it off of how the NFL did when Thursday Night Football moved over to Amazon, right? So down 40% approximately, right? Well, that's the NFL, the most important, most watched, most viewed media property in the United States. So if you're an Oregon State, Washington State game, which you have to worry about, you have to love all your children if you're conference commercial. And you have to worry about the exposure those schools get. And you're sitting over there on a streamer on a college football Saturday, and throw out the fact that the pay TV bundle for a college football Saturday used to create this organic environment of finding football games. All you needed to know was where all your broadcast channels were, and 5 or 6 different pay TV channels, and from noon until freaking midnight, you could find all sorts of college football games you wanted to watch. If you're sitting over on a streamer, you're out there by yourself. And there's no organic discovery or circulation set, as I like to call it. That old pay TV bundle and that bad programming guide everybody hated was part of a circulation set. And I used to liken it when I used to talk about this when I was at Fox to a heart beating through a circulatory system. So I called it a circulation set. And you just don't have that over on the streamers. You have incremental paywalls. You have effort you have to get through. And college football is a general market product, guys. And, what's one thing when you're talking about really hardcore fans who are prepared to run through a wall for something. But the reason why these sports become tier 1 sports is because they reach people who don't watch regularly. And part of that is made easy by that old ecosystem we had for 30 years now kind of going away. So when you jump all this content out into new types of distribution with different kind of paywalls, It slows down the ability of people to find it and watch it and stick with it. So it's going to impact anything. It impacted the NFL. Why wouldn't it impact even more Washington State and Oregon State? I think, you got to think about that if you're a conference commissioner. I mean, how much of this do you want? And 100% would not be the right answer, in my opinion.
Pat, one more thing about the Pac-12, and they're on the clock, obviously. Could they have, obviously USC, UCLA, and that story, and the Big Ten caught a lot of people off guard, just like Texas, Oklahoma in some ways. That's over. But could they also be trapped in what is basically the wrong time to try to get a media deal done because of the fact that most of these places are cutting back a lot and trying not to just like throw money at everybody like they've been doing for years?
Yeah, so I think, so the Pac-12 is in kind of a not a great spot at the moment, but I do think they're going to be okay, right? Because they're the Pac-12, even without USC and UCLA. Big time college football's never been worth more, guys, and they're still a part of it. And so I think it'll work out for them. But the point is well taken. If I'm right that we're going to a less profitable media business, and that means a less profitable sports media business, that doesn't necessarily follow that the NFL isn't going to make as much money as they ever did, or big time college football won't. But other places may get squeezed, or other parts of those sports may get squeezed because how you allocate capital is increasingly going to the things that people watch the most. If already college sports followed extreme power laws, right, where a couple entities on one end of the curve get most of the value, we're going to an era where it's going to be even bigger. And the newest NFL deal kind of recognizes that. And this Big Ten realignment and SEC realignment recognizes that. And so, college football playoff is going to get what it needs. But does that mean that all the college conferences, to include, the Pac-12, has to worry that they might accidentally slip into that mold, where they're not going to actually get carried up with kind of the extreme power law, with the far end of the curve and draft off those economics? They're going to get caught on the other side of it, where they start having to make hard choices about where their distribution really is. You don't want to be that person in this era we're about to go through, because if it's a less profitable media world, the people who pay the bills have to make choices about where the economics go.
And then perhaps that's what Brett Yormark did brilliantly by getting that done for the Big 12. Even though they could have gotten more, they got stability and extension.
Yeah, I think what Brett realized was this is a crisis. And he knew enough about media, right, to understand that. And with Karen as his advisor, he sorted that out and went out and locked down the costs and put them in a position to be ready to deal after this distribution evolution kind of maelstrom stabilizes in 3 to 5 years. And also the college football playoff is renegotiated and kind of sorted that out. There's more money in the system probably to digest expansion and mergers and such, and a kind of realignment that takes college football to its next level. They're in position to do that. Are they in position to absorb more schools? I don't believe any of that. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong that Brett isn't out selling every day, right? Doesn't mean that he's wrong to make all these conversations. I just don't think there's any money in the system currently to expand right now anywhere. I just don't think that's true. But at the same time, he's got the conference positioned to expand if somehow a great deal emerged, they're in a position to do it.
Yep.
So he did achieve that, and it was because he recognized it was a crisis, and that was the difference.
Pat, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Always appreciate your time and knowledge, insight. Pat Crakes, again, media consultant, executive with us on 365 Sports. His reaction to Tony Pettiti.